you know, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon.
If it's clear the president has been not a uniting figure on an issue that I think many Americans thought he would be a uniting figure. And it's very tragic. And to take a horrible situation like that and inject this issue, which, you know, may be a factor, may not be a factor, to use that instead of just saying, as a healing president would do, try to bring people together, but instead try to divide people, is really a sad and tragic legacy of this president.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Those, of course, the comments from President Obama, then immediately following that, comments from Rick Santorum, obviously presidential hopeful. Whether or not that was the role of a president to be weighing in, and were the words healing or not. Well, let's bring in our panel to talk about this and much more about the Trayvon Martin shooting. Congressman Rob Simmons, kind enough to join us, former Republican from Connecticut, actually current Republican and always Republican. Dominic Carter, veteran political journalist and author. You met him before, Pastor Edward Mulrain, and our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman. All right, I'll start with you, Congressman. When the president said those comments, did you think that they were really poetic comments that really struck a chord, or did you instinctively say, wait a minute, he's commander-in-chief, he shouldn't be getting involved in this?
Well, this doesn't go to his role as commander-in-chief necessarily, but I think if I was the president under these conditions, I would have called the governor of Florida and extended to the governor of Florida any assistance that the federal government could provide and hope for a speedy and just resolution of the issue. And then I mentioned earlier to Dominic and to others, I was a police commissioner in Connecticut. I can't imagine my Stonington Police Department not arresting an individual who's involved in a homicide, even if it was in self-defense. A youth.
But we're going to get into both the law that they sourced and also the perception of police. Dominic, when he said it, it felt right to me. And I didn't inject politics into it one way or the other. How'd you feel?
Well, first of all, if the president said orange, we're in an election year, Mr. Romney and Mr. Santorum would object and say that it's inappropriate for him to refer to orange, it's really blue.
Well, not Mr. Romney. He wouldn't have objected. Maybe Mr. Santorum.
So anything, and let's switch it. Let's say President Bush was in office. The Democrats would have screamed bloody murder at me. They complain about everything.
But it's not an election year and he said it, okay? Because I think, who knows, but I think Andrew would have said it if it happened last year or the year before. Did it feel right when he said it, or did you say,
It did. It felt right to me, but I also had the same reaction from the Cambridge incident that led to the beer summit, which some people thought might have been a stretch too. This president was always going to be potentially in trouble anytime he spoke out on race, because he is the first black president, and because that was always going to be sought as a wedge to try to divide voters. So the political reaction to it is not surprising, a little bit disturbing, because you've got an issue that cuts to the core and a lot of people are talking about it, and I thought the president did a good job of trying to soothe nerves. As for what Rick Santorum was saying about, you know, not uniting the, well, this is a divisive issue. It's not like the president has a magic wand or the perfect answer that, oh, all of a sudden, you know, race isn't going to be a problem in this country when it has been since before we were founded.
Can't we all get along? It wouldn't exactly fly.
And Richard, I would like to say this. Keep in mind, and I agree, I want to pick up on the point that you made, that the president, whether you feel it's appropriate or not, there are a lot of angry African Americans around the country. And his comment, to a degree, put some at ease, in which he said, look, I can't go any further because the Justice Department is investigating this and I can't taint it. But they expected him to say something. Now remember, I've always said for months on this program that this president can never talk about race, ever. He can't win.
You said he can never be the angry black man.
He can never be the angry black man under any circumstance.
Now, I want to get to, we talked about law enforcement here, and obviously people have been weighing in with opinions, very few, if any, sympathetic to the shooter in this particular case. Everyone trying to maybe divine what happened that evening. But I want to read a comment, and this one came from a New Orleans police officer, and he posted this on his Facebook. And this is Officer Giroir, I believe I'm pronouncing his name right here. And what he said was, act like a thug, die like one. And I'm going to bring you back in here, Reverend. And obviously, I'm not ascribing his beliefs to law enforcement in New Orleans, let alone anywhere else in the country. But this is a guy who got cleared for a shooting in New Orleans of a young black male, all right? Is there a feeling in your congregation that if you're a young black man and you got a hood on, you're sought or thought of as a thug by law enforcement?
I think that the perception, and I can't generalize law enforcement, because I'm sure there are some law enforcement in the community that see young men with the hoodies every day.
Well, I'm not saying what they think. I'm saying
right.
what the young men primarily in your congregation, when they talk to you, do they feel that they're thought of as, you know, a thug the minute they walk out the door?
Oh,
Is that in their, do they believe that's a perception?
I would say the majority of them, yes. I mean, I believe that when a young black man, even by their parents, walk out the door, that they feel like they're going to be perceived as a thug, is going to be perceived as threatening to the community and threatening to the neighborhood. And the police, they definitely have a problem with, because they've encountered police before. I don't think there's one young black man that I know that have not encountered the police, and sometimes, and they say that we weren't even doing anything.
Well, and of course, in New York, everybody knows about stop and frisk, and that's for another evening. But as a former police commissioner, you saw that comment. You heard what Geraldo said, I'm sure he said. Well, it's the hoodie. If he didn't wear the hoodie, that was half the reason, if not more, that he got shot by Zimmerman that night. You know, I'm not asking you to name names, but you had to deal with officers in blue who must say, hey, you know what? I see something like that at night, you know. There's an image that gets there, you know, fair or not.
If you judge somebody on the basis of their clothing, their hood, or whatever, that essentially is profiling according to clothes. And I guess I don't know all the facts. None of us know all the facts. But the one thing that stands out to me is that in my community, with my police force, if there was a homicide, the perpetrator of the homicide, or the alleged perpetrator, would be arrested and taken under custody under some pretext, disturbing the peace, involuntary manslaughter, or whatever, for several reasons. One, to get them out of the public domain for their own protection. Two, to let the community know that the police are up in charge of the event and that justice will be done. You know, it's just the way we expect things to be done. And our police force operates under a police commission, which is civilian authority. We have African-American citizens in our community. Yep. So that's how we do it. And it didn't happen this way in Florida. Either the Florida law is terribly, terribly flawed, or the people making these decisions have made, in my opinion, wrong decisions by leaving this guy out on the street.
Or a combination of both.
Or both.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not only in that community, I say, I mean, in Florida community. I mean, we have this going on throughout all over the nation.
Yeah. You got 16 states who have the same equivalent of stand your ground, which we learned today was written by the NRA, and they've acknowledged as much that they wrote the law, and then basically verbatim, it was introduced to the legislature, and now we see where it is.
Which,
all right.
I just want to point out that officer in New Orleans has been suspended indefinitely for that comment, and Geraldo, as we all know, has apologized.
Thank you, Dominic. I appreciate that. All right.